my name is Bárbara dos Santos, and today I will talk a little bit about sod seeding small grains into Bermuda grass. And I'm used to call this as interseeding winter wheat into Bermuda grass. So if anytime I change the term, remember that means the same thing. So we are going to cover a little bit about the management, when we need to plant, what's the fertilization recommendation, when it's great to graze, and how we can control some pests, and I'm going to talk a little bit about early discoveries that I have found during the first year of my experiment. So when you think about interseeding, we need to pay attention when is the right time to plant it. And the recommendation for planting is mid-fall, so around late September to early October is the best time. And another important thing to do is make sure to scalp your field before planting it. It's gonna make your sowing much easier, and it's also gonna let the sun hit your seed because it's very important during germination. And we are interseeding into the Bermuda grass, and Bermuda grass has a very dense root system, and that's why it's important to have that scalp and to make it easier to be cutted and planted for your season. And also before that, you can control your Bermuda grass by applying some herbicides. And there are two good herbicides recommended for doing that Bermuda grass controlling. And the first one will be paraquat. And paraquat is a non-systemic herbicide that make the paraquat the more preferred one, because as we are interested in just suppress Bermuda grass and not kill it, it's important to use, it's good to use a non-systemic, because it's not going to translocate to the root system and end up killing your plant. But another option that in this time is a systemic herbicide, but because it's very used, is a glyphosate. And using glyphosate, since it's a systemic one, you need to take care in the quantity and how you're doing it, because over years, if you apply it over years, it may end up killing your Bermuda grass, and we don't want this at all. We want to keep Bermuda grass green for the next summer. And both herbicides is important to follow the label recommendation. Okay, now that we have all your site prepared, it's time to plant. And how do we do it? So the best method to plant your winter wheat or any choice of a small grain is using a no-till drill, because it's not going to disturb your soil and you're going to keep your Bermuda grass there intact for the summer. And by that, it's important to use a depth by 1 to 1.5 inches, and a space row. We use, in our case for our experiment, 7.5 inches, and that was a very good spacing. And another important fact is you need to make sure that you have the covering wheels after cutting your soil, because using that wheels, you're gonna close the line that you just opened, and allowing your seed to be protected and also to have some moisture and making a very good germination for your season. Okay. Now it's time to look in this picture where I faced some problem in my planting, because the machine that we're using, normally the cutting disc in the middle, the one in the center, has less pressure comparing with the one in the borders, and this makes that the line was not perfectly cut. It was not. We have some gaps because Bermuda grass has a very dense root system, very strong root system, and whenever we tried to cut it with a disc that had not much pressure, we were not able to do it very evenly. And also, the wheels in the center has not much pressure as well, and to close the line that we just opened to make that contact between soil and seed was not very good. And then we can see in this slide that we have a gap of plants in the center line. So, and in the other picture, you can see that the soil was, the seed, sorry, was exposed, and that didn't allow the plant to, the seed to germinate. So it's important to check your implement and check the quality of it. For the fertilizations, always, as usual, go and do a soil analysis, take a soil sample, do analysis in the soil sample. If necessary, apply phosphorus and potassium by broadcast. And pH between 6 to 6.5 for a better forage production, for a better wheat production, considering for forage, is the recommended pH. And another phosphorus fertilization that is important is during planting. You can do it by using MAP, DAP, or also liquid. In our case, we found out that liquid was the best option, and we did it during planting. Very important, but also very important to check the rate, because applying more than 20 pounds per acre may burn and kill your seeds, and we don't want this. Okay. Nitrogen, most important one. We recommended to apply between 30 to 40 pounds of actual nitrogen per 1,000 pounds of expected yield. We apply nitrogen based on how much forage we wanna graze or harvest in that season. So thinking on that, 30 to 40 pounds is the recommended one. And also it's very important to make to have a higher yield and also a better nitrogen use efficient to split your application. And the recommendation is split it by 50-50, so 50% after or before planting. It depends, especially in the weather, by the year that we're planting it, and the other 50% you apply during spring. So about February, go and apply the other 50%. And sometimes we can have, depending on the year again, depending if it's not that drought, you can have 2 grazing cycles for the winter wheat that we're planting. And another very interesting picture that I have here in the slide to show you guys is that this picture, those 6 pictures are showing how Bermuda grass, they are different depending on variety. So some varieties are more developed for hay, so they're more standing plants. Other varieties are more for grazing, so you have more rhizomes, you have more spread plants. And this is an important factor to look when you're interseeding. It's important to choose the right one, because if you choose some that are for grazing, sometimes it's gonna make your planting more difficult, because the dense root system, as I said, will impact it when you are cutting it, and you're gonna have some gaps in planting. And in this picture we have 3 varieties, and if you look in the 2 first, the first one, the second one, the first one, the white parts in the black and white picture are showing the black and white pictures. The white portion is showing the wheat plants, and we can see that whenever planted into good well cultivar, we have more wheat plants than when you planted wheat into the greenfield variety. We can see clearly that we have more plants in good well, so choosing the right variety for Bermuda grass is something very important as well. Okay, now that we have our wheat there, it's time to graze. But when is the best time to graze? So the rule of thumb is when your wheat is between 8 to 12, you allow your animals to graze it. But more important than that, you gotta check how is your root development. So you go there, very simple, take one off your plant from the ground with the root system and take a look on that. If it looks like the second picture here in the B picture, it's perfectly. We have that wheat with the secondary roots developed, and which means that whenever an animal take the wheat from the ground, it's not gonna take the whole plant, because the secondary roots will make that plant stronger there, sticking stronger there. Comparing with the other one, the picture A, where we just have the primary root, and whenever the animal take it, it's gonna take the whole plant, and we don't want it. We wanna keep that wheat in the ground because we can maybe have a second harvest. So it's very important to check for the root development. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiment, because one of the system that I'm trying here is the winter wheat, and I have other two systems that are common use in Oklahoma, and I have them to compare with the winter wheat so we can see how it would look. My experiment has been developed in Perkins, Oklahoma. And we have a picture of the plot here that is divided by three portions, where the green portion is showing the winter wheat. This is a picture from November 20th. So we can see that during beginning of the winter, we have the winter wheat growing here. The other system is the stockpile Bermuda grass, where we have some nitrogen fertilization before Bermuda grass get in dormant stage. So we have that boom in Bermuda grass in biomass, but it's still dormant. And the other one, that's control, which is basically what the producers do. Like, they have Bermuda grass growing during the summer season, but nothing in the winter. It's dormant there. And what we have here is, in the next slide, is a timeline showing the managements that I did for each system. So we can see that the first months are the winter in the fall season, and for the control we don't have anything being produced there, and in the other ones we have the winter wheat, and for the stockpile we have a stockpile growing there. And there I'm also showing the time that I did my fertilization, so it's very interesting, and pay attention in each time and each management we did. Okay, the more important thing, what we got from that, what are the results? So when you talk about forage, quality is important, quantity is important, but quality is very important as well. So let's first talk about the quantity. When you gather all the forage produced throughout the year, like the Bermuda grazing season during the summer, and for two systems we have some winter forage being produced, we end up seeing that for the stockpile Bermuda grass system, we have a much higher biomass being produced. And 1/3 of that production is corresponded to the stockpile production. So keep that in mind, because we're gonna bring that later. Followed by interseeding winter wheat, by the second one being the most produced over year, and the Bermuda grazing season, the control as expected. As we're just producing Bermuda grass during the summer, it has a lower total forage biomass. Okay, do you remember that I told you that quality is very important? Well, let's look for the quality then. The next two graphs are showing the two important quality factors. And one of the factors is crude protein, and another one is IVTDMD48, which stands for in vitro diameter digestibility 48 hours. It basically talks about how much that animal ate and what digestible, and so we're talking about digestibility. So one is protein and another one is digestibility. And when you look, the yellow portion, remember the yellow portion was stockpiled, and the yellow portion in those graphs are always stockpiled. And when you look at the quality of stockpile, because stockpile was good production, if you stop there, the better one, stockpile. But when you look at the quality of that, the quality was not very good. And comparing with the other one, comparing with winter wheat, for example, that had an intermediate crude protein, intermediate digestibility. So it's showing how, even though sometimes we have quality, even though we have quantity, sometimes the quality is not very good. So combining those factors, it shows that maybe interseeding winter wheat is a very good option for increasing grazing period in Oklahoma. Thank you.